How did you know I said good news? Good morning.
You read your lips real well.
Okay, we're good.
Let's move.
The new skill we are all learning.
Yes, I
Via
guess.
Zoom.
All right, well, let's call the meeting to order. We've got roll call. So let's move to item C, approval of the agenda for the October 15, 2020 meeting of the Green Bay Housing Authority. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A motion, and I will second. Any additions or correction, or any additions to the agenda? All right, hearing none, then all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That's what happens when you're sitting in Florida and it's really sunny and warm outside.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, Bill, no, that's not fair.
Really, Bill?
Yeah, but I'm in Florida and I'm on a Zoom meeting with all of you, so what's fair? So.
I mean, that.
We're married tomorrow.
All right, moving on.
Item D, approval of minutes from the September 17th, 2020 meeting of the Green Bay Housing Authority. Are there any additions or corrections to the September 17th meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to regular business, item E. Item number 1, consideration with possible action to apply for low-income housing tax credit for Mason Manor.
All right. So we all know we've been on this trip on trying to figure out a way to make improvements to Mason Manor. At our last meeting, representatives from Baker Tilly were here to talk to us about our options. In fact, today we also have Don and Caitlin here from Baker Tilly. We also have Scott Kegler, who's our HUD representative, here as well. He will not be speaking to any financing issues, but there are some HUD concerns, like not concerns, but comments to be made with regards to what we're doing. I know Jamie's been working a lot with Caitlin in trying to get together the documents and the information that we needed to get to make that application for the credits. I think I heard that one of the things we needed to do was to try to get our number for rehab per unit down into that $70,000 range and to see if we could do the things we needed to do. I believe that our cap improvements company said that that's possible to do, correct? So at this point, if it's all right, Jamie, if you wanted to add something, otherwise I would turn it over to Don and Caitlin to talk about kind of where we are at this point with regards to the application of the tax credits.
Motion open the floor.
I will second that motion. All in favor of opening the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The floor is open. Don and Caitlin, go ahead. And Scott, welcome. Go ahead.
Yep. If you want to jump in with maybe, so maybe we'll start with kind of the rehab discussion and so forth. We'll kind of start with that.
Yeah, so during the last, board meeting, I kind of talked through the options of, 9%, 4%, and, our wish list just didn't work, because we, had a significant level of rehab, but it caused, huge gaps to the numbers to try and accomplish that full level of rehab. So when we last spoke, we left it at, we were going to circle back with Gorman, as they had kind of put that scope estimate together based on your wish list, and that's where we came up with the 90,000. So we circled back to them and said, okay, if we trim out, the extra things or like the things we really wanted to do and just went with the essentials, where would we be? And that was the $70,000 figure. So then when we got that back from Gorman, we went to Dimension, who had completed your capital needs assessment, and asked them to confirm, if they could update that report to match that $70,000 number, because that's what HUD is going to look at, that's what LEDA is going to look at to make sure that we're meeting the critical repairs of what's needed to the building, and they are able to do that. So from our perspective, we can move forward with a path of tax credits at $70,000 of rehab a unit. We have a financially feasible pro forma that works. So really then, the next step would be to decide if we want to go ahead and move forward with the tax credit submission this year. And again, that due date is December 11th. And to do that, WIDA requires that we have our CHAP in hand. And so we would have to submit a RAD application in order to get a CHAP to submit a LIHTC application. Maybe I'll pause there for a second. If there are questions on that.
I have some questions. So I'm going to spew some stuff out, and you guys tell me if I'm off base on this, okay?
Okay.
Just for my new interim director role, I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of developers now who are, of course, calling because they want to get applications in, right, for housing projects. I heard that WIDA for a project like ours is probably going to approve one project for the state. And the odds are pretty good. It's going to be coming from Milwaukee because they probably are able to point it out higher than anybody else. Because a lot of the initiatives from WIDA are going to the rural areas, which Green Bay would not be one of those qualifying areas. I guess bottom line, the odds of us being successful on that tax credit application is probably pretty small. What do you think about those things? True, false?
Maybe I'll start and Caitlin can jump in too. So we'd be competing in the 9%. We'd be competing what's called a preservation, and there's about 2 million of credits, how the math works. And so that's probably 2 deals. I mean, 1 deal, 2 deals, it's pretty consistent, Cheryl. So the most you can request is, 1.4 million. So it's probably 1.5 deals, maybe 2 deals. So you see absolutely on that point, Cheryl is really accurate. So let's say it's 2 deals. Right, then we're competing, and we may talk about this, as you said, we're competing against the rest of the state, we're competing against Milwaukee, which, have qualified census tracts and different things, so it would be very competitive. And we maybe talked a little bit that on our preliminary score, it was, yes, I think it's fair to say it's very competitive. It's hard to say exactly what the chances are, but I would say it's less than 50% chance, I would say, is a less than 25% chance. That's hard to say. But it's very competitive.
Is there benefit to apply for these tax credits, even knowing that you might not get them? I mean, does applying for them get your foot in the door with WIDA, with the project? So if we want to apply next year, there's a benefit to that? I would say there's no benefit. Some states, it's like, right, you just got to keep applying. Eventually, WIDA hasn't really been like that. The only thing that we've seen is like if somehow a deal got awarded, but for some reason they couldn't move forward, there's a chance, but we can know there's no guarantees. If you're on the waiting list, we could say, we really like this new construction project in Wausau better than, it doesn't necessarily have to go to another preservation type project. So I would say, and Caitlin, I would say there's probably not necessarily a benefit if you don't think, if your likelihood is low, there's really no benefit to just applying to apply. Because literally you're out.
What's the consequence of not winning? Are we dead in the water?
No, you can
Go ahead.
Go ahead, you go.
No, yeah, so no, you're kind of on the hold list or essentially waiting list, but you would only, for this year, but again, would only potentially, if one of those 2 deals, maybe they got funded in front of you, couldn't move forward and had to actually return their credits to WIDA, you might be on that waiting list.
You would be out some money to pay for your third-party support. That would be the drawback, I guess, of applying and not winning. We'd have to pay for a market study and an appraisal. I mean, you've already got the capital needs assessment, but, it would be those few third-party reports and some cost to put in the application.
Right, so we're talking about a couple $1,000, right?
Probably more like 20 to 30,000.
Okay. Well, that's more significant. I mean, if it was, you got a 50% chance of winning you know, and there's no harm, no foul if you lose, and it's a big win if you win, okay, that doesn't sound like risk, but if we gotta put 20, 30 grand on the table, that sounds more like risk.
And then, like, unfortunately, if you put that on the table and apply and don't get it, when we apply next year, all of those reports are expired. So we would have to get updated reports, which would, it probably wouldn't be the exact same amount. Probably could do it for something a little bit less, but it would be another, financial investment to reapply.
Don, is there, Don or Caitlin? I think about these credits going forward, and hopefully WIDA puts more money into urban projects and not rural projects. I mean, we can hope that, which would make the pool bigger for all of us. But Milwaukee is Milwaukee, and is there a way that we could be more competitive with these players who've been, who can score better than we can? Or are we in a situation where that, look, it is what it is. This is the score. Mason Manor's not moving anywhere to get to a better place. So it's just kind of, it is what it is. And our hope is really to hope WIDA puts more money in the pool.
I think, maybe what we can do in short order, in maybe a couple days, maybe, by like Monday or Tuesday, I think what we can do is give you, what these scoring categories are. And really, a lot of it, does come down to locational type points and census tracts and things like that I think you can do everything you can do, but to your point, Cheryl, if some of these census tracts and things don't change, so it's really probably talking with WIDA on, hey, this is important, can you tweak your rules of your game, the QAP, such that we can be competitive, because here's our deal, if it's not competitive because of these three categories, so we can kind of, we'll pinpoint that to you by early next week on what some of those, so everyone on the board can look at, why is this maybe not as competitive as you noted, and a lot of it is just location.
So based on those factors, then, what are your recommendations for application? Lay it on us, Matt.
Yeah, no,
We can handle it.
Yeah, no, I'll just talk aloud, and I think everything's on the table, right? It's $20,000 or $30,000. That's not, that's not insignificant, right, for your agency. Based on what, again, like you said, what we know, what we read in the paper, what we see, we think there probably will be 2 or 3 other deals, or 4 deals. We don't know. We don't know the whole population that would score ahead of yours. Is there a chance they could make a mistake, right? Sometimes, although WIDA, it's interesting. Sometimes you don't have perfect applications. People make mistakes. WIDA's actually changed a policy where they're actually going to have what's called a cure period for the first time ever. If you made some kind of a mistake, or maybe, I don't know the exact rules on it because it's brand new, but they allow you to cure that mistake. So, I'm torn. I'm almost leaning against it, but I'm torn because it has much needed rehab, right? I mean, now we're a year out without that rehab, and now you're plugging money into it. So that's my only worth it. But I hate you to spend $30,000 and when we think that it's not a great chance to win. You know what I mean? So I don't care any other bonus.
I mean, yeah, with where the score is right now, and as Don was saying, a lot of it is, location based. Unfortunately, we're just not getting points in a certain category. There is a question of, you can get 5 points by successfully responding to an RFP, which I know that you guys had issued an RFP. And so we have inquired to WIDA if we could count that as points, because it seems like, since you guys were the issuer and we're, submitting on behalf of your building, maybe they won't count that. So, if they counted those 5 points and you partner with a strong developer partner who, gets significant points in development teams, maybe you have a better shot, but, as we're just talking, it's only $2 million in the set aside, and if someone ahead of you who scores higher needs 1.4, and we need 1.4 million, it could be tough. So if the thought is, to apply next year, my thought would be to really spend this year coming up, exploring other sources. Like, for example, we were just looking at the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines. It seems like their implementation plan and their scoring categories really favors RAD deals. You can apply for up to $1 million of AHP funds. I believe their applications are due in June. So perhaps we look towards other sources that we can apply to ahead of submitting the tax credit application, and kind of start teeing up that such that when we apply next year, if we feel that we're competitive and can get those credits, we could move quicker to close because we'll already have some of our other sources in line.
Okay, so let me back away from the tax credits for a minute, because, you know, let's say as a board we say we don't want to spend the $20,000-$30,000 in the money that we're going to need to make some repairs, and we're going to need to match and put towards this project. I think maybe that's where, Scott, you could lend us a hand here. Say we're not going to get tax credits, then there are some things we should be doing as an organization, whether that's pulling 50 units out of Mesa Manor towards Section 18 potentially to create more income, or ways that as a housing authority we can look at trying to figure out ways to make these bigger improvements at Mesa Manor. If there are some hub things we could be doing separate from the tax credit process.
Well, I mean, what you're referencing is like the RAD Section 18 closeout blend, which I think is probably the best strategy for Mesa Manor. You've got, let's see, what is it, 154 units at Mesa Manor. So essentially 104 of them would be RAD, which in general keeps the rents at about the same level as you're getting under public housing. There's some advantages to RAD increasing, you know, future increases are a little bit more predictable in the RAD platform than in public housing, but in general, kind of thinking in it, its rule of thumb is to just consider that the RAD income is going to be basically the same as what you're getting under public housing. The other 50 units would be eligible for, my recommendation would be HCV platform and not the PPRA platform, which is project-based rental assistance, but to go the HCV route, because there is the potential for significant revenue increases. And I apologize, I have multiple screens, so I'm not paying attention to you. I just have to look at some of my other screens here where I've got some spreadsheets up. And, you know, if we're looking at the funding levels, you know, the rents under the HCV platform are, you know, anywhere from $200 to $300 more per unit per month on those 50 units. So there's a potential for a lot of extra income. Now, this is kind of what you're paying Baker Tilly and some of these other people to run a lot of these pro formas for you. But I think it might, you know, look at what that increase in cash flow is that allows you to potentially use that for debt service coverage. And I think Caitlin was mentioning there's some other non-tax credit things out there. There's also potential for 4% tax credit deals. But again, my job is not like your finance person. There's other things you could do with Mesa Manor. I mean, you could do a streamlined voluntary conversion, which basically would be, you'd be able to convert all of the, well, you'd be able to convert all of the tenants over to vouchers. But it becomes much more difficult to project-base those vouchers under a streamlined voluntary conversion. So then you run the risk of potentially lots of your tenants taking the vouchers and moving out of Mesa Manor, and then you no longer have subsidy on that. Now, there's some strategies you can look at there, but that would be potential to take 100% of the units and get it into an HCV platform. It's a little bit riskier. That's something to talk about, but I think where you need to start is kind of what you have been doing and looking at, okay, what are the rehab needs? You know, what is it that we absolutely positively need to do? How much do we need to finance that? And then, you know, if there's additional things that we can add in there, that's great. But with when we're talking repositioning with Mesa Manor, you know, there's kind of only two options at this point. And it's either the streamlined voluntary conversion, which Yeah, I don't want to go into a lot of details on that, but I don't think it's the best strategy because you run the risk of not being able to tie the subsidy to Mason Manor. The subsidy in a streamline gets tied to the tenants. So if the tenants move, you could potentially lose the subsidy. Where with RAD, you're able to project-base those HCVs, and at least for a third of the units, you're able to generate significantly more revenue. Obviously, you don't run an HCV program, so you do have to cooperate or work in collaboration with the Brown County Housing Authority because they have a voucher program. I believe you've already replied to an RFP from Brown County on your scattered site units for that. So, you do lose a little bit of control on the subsidy side when you go the HCV route, but you're still the landlord, you still own the property, you're still dealing with the tenants, and there are some potential strategies where you could even continue to help administer the subsidy on behalf of Brown County. Obviously, Brown County would have to consent to that and agree to enter into that type of agreement, but you've been running public housing, you know how the subsidy standards work, you know how to do income certifications for the tenants, so Brown County could conceivably contract you as almost like a management agent on those PBVs. That's not something HUD would get involved in. HUD would not mandate that, but there's nothing with HUD that would say that you can't do that. I mean, frankly, Brown County already uses a management agent for administering their voucher program, so adding another management agent isn't that big a deal. I think, kind of the options I'm talking about are probably things that your consultants have already gone over. I can provide further insight on kind of what HUD's thinking on that is. One of the things that did come up in kind of this previous conversation with the tax credits that does concern me a little bit, especially if you're looking at doing a tax credit application this year, is I think somebody said that WEDA is looking for you to already have a RAD chap issued in order to apply for the tax credit, and I see nodding. So it's tight, but conceivably you could get a chap issued by the December 11th. It's really tight, but be aware that some of the initial steps for RAD haven't been done yet. So there is pretty specific requirements on what needs to be included in your PHA plan for RAD, and those are not in there. Right now you basically just have kind of general, Green Bay Housing is going to be looking at doing different repositioning strategies, including RAD. It's in your PHA plan, but when you actually look at the specific requirements for a RAD, your PHA plan, there's specific things that have to be covered in there. You haven't gone into those specific details. Right now you're kind of just have given yourself this broad, we're going to look at this. You've notified the residents and the public that we're looking at these strategies. That doesn't prevent you from getting that chap issued, but you're going to, some things may be a little bit out of sequence. RAD, getting to the point of the RAD chap is pretty easy. It can move pretty quickly. It's once the chap is there that things start to get complicated. In a perfect world, we would like you to do the steps in the order that you're supposed to, but that's not out of the realm of possibility. However, now we're 6-7 weeks, I think, from the tax credit application date, and the longer it takes you to decide on whether to do that, the more difficult it's going to be to get a chap issued in time to have it for the tax credit application.
Thanks, Scott.
I don't know, guys, as a board, what are you thinking that you're hearing right now? I don't want
I
to.
hear that the cons for pursuing tax credits in the year 2020 are piling up pretty high. That's what I'm hearing.
I would agree.
Is there some advantage to thinking about it for the 2021 year while we do have enough time? So, I mean, there was a tone to Scott mentioning it might be a little bit tight right now for us to move on it for this year. If you get started for next year
I think not only right on it's kind of on the RAD side, but just some of the things that came into it and other sources, and gives you time to not only use the word lobby, but to talk, lead of the year and say, hey, this is a very important deal for the city of Green Bay. And we can help you come up with, again, as we'll send out the scoring to you next week, what are the areas that we need changed or different, or look at what does Green Bay, why is Green Bay scoring in these deals, how can we to think about this and so forth. So I think it gives you plenty of time to give leaders a year on that.
And that's maybe my next question. Is there some strategy to being turned down in 2020? If we get in the queue and we don't win this year, does it help for our odds for winning next year?
No, it's no. I would say it's a definite no. Could you say, well, we applied this year, we just couldn't, we just didn't score. But we know that, we know what the score is. There's not very many subjective scoring areas, so it's really objective.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that makes more sense. It's not a human making this decision. It's based on a calculation and no
I think the commentary, Steve, would be, we didn't apply based on how, little funding WIDA has available, number one, and the fact that the scoring is set up doesn't put maybe the smaller communities in a place to be competitive. Is what would be my discussion, I guess, right? Compared to applying and getting denied and then spending 20 to 30,000 housing authority money that we probably have to take out of our unrestricted. I'm thinking, Stephanie, right? We wanted to do that, which is the money that we've set aside to help us be competitive on the tax credits. So I guess I'm not feeling the love from this board on applying for these tax credits. I mean, Bill?
I think it's a way too big of a risk at this point.
Aaron?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, do you want the formality of a vote, or if we're just not doing it, we don't have to worry about it?
Well, I think the agenda, let me see. Maybe, so our motion should be, I guess, something to the effect of maybe, and let me just talk this through with Don and Caitlin and Scott. I don't know if we need to make a motion to not apply for tax credits, but we should make a motion to do something maybe with regards to this, whether that's to work on the application for these tax credits for 2021, maybe, and then that would include some work that we would do with HUD, whatever we could do with regards to figuring out other options, or if there are other funding sources that you think we could be working with, for example, that other than these tax credits, we could be exploring that as well. So maybe some type of a generic motion to authorize staff to work with Baker Tilly on
Exploring for 2021.
Exploring alternative options.
for 2021.
For 2021.
Yeah, I think technically speaking, we'll have to close the floor before we can do that.
Oh, correct. Yep.
So Don and Scott.
I would just, before we close the floor though, I just, Scott, Don, or Caitlin, any thoughts on your end about what our motion should be at this point?
I think it would be to, consider, or enter into, planning for, the 2021, pardon me, actually, for WIDA, technically the WIDA's 2022 tax credit round, which would be approximately December, but to, explore other sources, just put a plan together to be a success, maybe to a successful position for 2022.
I guess I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just saying, any thoughts on your end on where we should go with this next?
Well, I don't really have any advice on what motions you should be doing right now, but just so that the board is aware, there is no tax credit requirement for RAD. So moving forward with RAD can happen independently of what's going on with the tax credit, where with the tax credit, there's kind of the RAD component as part of that to help with the scoring. So even if, you're looking at not, applying for the tax credits not until next year, December, that doesn't mean you can't put in a RAD application sooner than that. And that way, that piece is already kind of taken care of if you do decide to go tax credit financing. That being said, well, I guess I do have a recommendation on motion, but I think the board should actually consider, looking at RAD specifically, not as part of the tax credit kind of discussion, and actually doing a motion on the RAD. Doesn't necessarily have to happen at this meeting. I'm not sure what the agenda looks like, and that may not be something that can be specifically acted on. But if the board does, approve going forward with a RAD application, then that's just one of the check boxes off of the things that need to be done for putting in the full RAD. And then just be aware that there are going to be some changes that need to happen with the PHA plan. So, and I can work with Jamie and Cheryl on kind of the steps to make sure that the public notices are there, the resident requirements are all there. But so that the RAD doesn't necessarily have to happen in lockstep with the tax credit. And the other nice thing with the RAD is if you go forward with the RAD, sooner, like let's say you get all the steps done with RAD and by May or June, you're kind of set on RAD, you can let it sit on the shelf waiting for the tax credit award. So you can tell the RAD team that, hey, yeah, okay, we're ready to do this RAD thing, but our financing component deals with tax credit, and so we have to work with the tax credit timing. RAD, the RAD team and HUD completely understand that. So it's not like we're going to be like, hey, you've had this RAD thing sitting around for 6 months. Why aren't you doing anything? It's like, oh, we're waiting on the tax credit application. So they don't necessarily have to work in conjunction. And actually, from what I've heard from Caitlin and I'm sorry, I forgot the other Don, is essentially kind of getting the RAD done first. It's probably a better idea on the tax credit application anyway. So.
Well, I'd just add that at this point, we don't have a RAD component on the agenda for today, so that we can continue on at the next board meeting to discuss that more in detail. But in terms of the tax credits, we don't have a date, so it's not like we're specifically dealing with tax credits for this session. We could continue to authorize staff to work for the tax credit component of this into the future, and not put any deadline or dates on it at this point. But that's something for a motion. So, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I was just thinking that your motion could be something to the effect of advise staff to proceed on with planning for the 2022 WIDA tax credit application, which including a RAD application. I think the board's already approved us getting the check. So I think we've already got that assumption that we're moving towards the RAD, but part of that planning process for 2022 will be the WIDA tax credit and the RAD. So
yeah, I want to ask another question though. This is twice now that Scott has mentioned that our order of operations isn't necessarily accurate or proper. I mean, are we working to an outline? I guess, Scott said something about how this should have been done before that, and maybe that's not a deal breaker. And he's also saying that these two things can be separated from themselves. I mean, do we have a clear map, or is that still what we're trying to determine?
I mean, if I can speak first, I mean, as Cheryl said, I think the approval for the RAD application was maybe at one of the prior board meetings. So I think that is in motion, my understanding. So I think that is congruent with what Scott said, moving ahead with that. They are separate from tax credits. They are related but separate. So.
Okay. So we're not wrecking anything on putting stuff out of order or tethering things together. We did that other thing already, or it's in the works. And
just to clarify my remarks, I mean, there's the recommended optimal process to go through this. But frankly, I don't think I've ever worked with a housing authority that's actually done the recommended path. It's pretty flexible. I mean, there are certain in the RAD, they call it milestones. So there are certain things that you have to hit in a certain order. But when it gets to kind of real ticky-tacky on having to hit the order in the right process isn't until you're already past the chap status and you're kind of into some of the more detailed things. But when you're just like at the beginning, it's like, this is where we would like you to do it, but, you know, they always come in a little bit out of order, and that's fine. And a lot of times the order gets messed up because it's the tax credit component that everybody's waiting on, so.
I think from a board member perspective, that's exactly the clarification I needed. Thank you.
All right.
So really then the motion would be easier then. The motion would just simply be to have staff proceed with planning for tax credit application for the 2022 round, right?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Let's go with, let's close the floor first. So I think, Steve, you had a motion to close. I will second. Any further discussion on closing the floor?
Thank you guys so much for all your help.
Yes, I would strongly concur. Thank you all for your guidance on this, because we would be going around in circles without it. So, Caitlin, Don, thank you. All right, so there's a motion to close the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks.
Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, Cheryl, you've got the motion, for staff to continue. You'll put that into the record. Any further questions regarding the motion before we actually move to?
We need a second.
Yeah, all right. So we've got a motion, and is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. And Cheryl, just want to run the motion back for us one more time.
The motion is for staff to proceed with planning for the 2022 round of WIDA tax credit.
All right. Any further questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Staff, continue to work.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to, moving on to regular business item number 2, consideration with possible action to award scattered sites, lawn care, and snow removal contract to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder, Lizer of Wisconsin Incorporated. Cheryl?
So that's, Jamie's actually going to handle that.
Jamie, that's yours?
You're muted, Jamie, by the way. There you go.
Yeah, I'm unmuted and I was bringing up an email so I could explain. So we went out for an RFQ because our scattered sites, lawn care and snow plowing has expired. A couple weeks ago we had a site visit. We had a really good showing. We had like 9 or 10 vendors show up, but ultimately we only had one vendor submit a bid, which was Lizer. Between purchasing and myself, we did reach out to the other contractors that was there. A lot of it is due to COVID-related items, and they've already booked their snow season. Another competitor said that he knew what his hourly rate was, and he would not be competitive due to some of the other vendors he saw at the site inspection, so didn't waste their time to submit a bid. Lizer currently is our vendor. They do a good job. We work with them pretty well. I would suggest or recommend that we approve the RFQ to Lizer. To give you some numbers, when we went out in, I think, 2015, 2016, the numbers, we had one other competitive quote during that bid process, and their numbers are significantly higher than what Lizer proposed to us during this bid. So I really think we are getting the most competitive bid with Lizer.
Is it much of an increase from the existing contract that they have?
It's roughly like $10 per, so like the flat rate price per property for 1 to 4, it was previously like $30, now it's $40. Same with the 4 to 10 and 10 plus, it was $40, now it's increased to $50. It was $50 and it increased to $60. But over the last 6 years, they've only increased 2% each year.
And this year we're jumping 20 to 25%, is that what you said?
But these numbers are still significantly lower than the numbers that we received in like 2015 from other competitors.
And this is for the scattered site snow removal?
Correct. So when we either have a vacant property, we have Lizer take care of the sidewalk and the driveway, or if our tenants fail to do that when they're required to do that, then we'll send Lizer in as well.
This is an existing master agreement that they only get paid on if we need them to do it.
Correct. Yes. So we have an agreement that we email them our vacant units every Friday. So if they have a vacant unit next week, they would receive an email from us tomorrow regarding a lawn care that would need to be cut or a snow removal if it were to snow the following week.
Okay, so how much, just because I'm curious, last year was paid out on this contract?
Can you help me, Steph? She had it. There you go.
Yes, I got that for, I'm just looking for the email that I had sent to purchasing on that, so just, let me look. And you worked with Jackie, right?
Yes, Jackie is the purchasing, yep. I would guess, Steve, that we maybe send 1 to 2 properties in. Like right now, grass really isn't cutting or growing, so we don't really need it to have it cut. So we probably haven't sent anybody in until since midsummer. But I would say it's like 1 to 2 for the 30 days that the unit's vacant.
Yeah, I like big number, lots of commas, little number, no commas. That's all
It is, well, for the 2018-19 year, we spent $6,053.40, but that would have been lawn care and snow removal. And then with Lizer, and then as of 2019 through the date of this email, which was just before the end of June, we had spent $6,526.60.
Okay, so if we approve this, we're talking about an increase of somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000 maximum, provided it's about equal with last year.
Well, Jamie has kept her units very full, so as long as they continue to mow their lawn and shovel their driveway, it should be less.
Okay, I mean, that helps. Like if the decimal place was over, you know, that would be a much bigger thing to, thank you.
All right, do you need to make a motion to approve, Bill?
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Lizer as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, motion carries. Very good, thank you. Moving on to informational, GBHA bills. They're in your packet. Are there any questions? Or Stephanie, anything to add? Anything out of the ordinary?
Nope, not on this one. I do know that Cheryl said that she had given me a bill, I haven't been in the office this week, for the legal services for getting our,
Section 18 legal documentation and filing in. So we had a bill, was that 3,200? Steph, somewhere around there.
I haven't seen it. I think that that's right though, because I thought that's what you had sent me before.
Right.
Jamie's got some handwriting going on.
Hey, Erin got kicked out, so Kaz, the gatekeeper, can you see if she's in the waiting room to get put back in?
Yeah, I saw that, but she's not calling to get back in yet, so I'll add her on the
Okay, she's
otherwise.
having some difficulty. She's texting me.
Okay.
I mean, we're on to the informational. She can have my spot.
I'll let her know, Steve.
No. Can't wait till the director's report is over.
I know. No, I love it. Let's keep having it. I thought maybe Jamie was going for like a virtual high five.
Yes.
So a lot of excitement, a little bit of disappointment. I'm just calling it as it's happening.
You're making a Zoom call fun there, Steve.
You gotta dig deep right now, Sandy. It's ugly out there.
All right, anything further on the bills? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the financial report. Stephanie again.
In the packet, the first page was the capital funds program, the CFP funds. Just a little update, we had originally for the 2020 year, we were awarded $325,000. We did receive an email from HUD that we received an extra $1,000 or so. They must have had some extra money lying around.
And it wasn't designated for PPE? I can't believe it.
No, yeah, we did spend that extra money right away, so there's only $9 of the extra money left, so.
Good. Spend that first.
Yep. Financial report, we're just plugging along new year. The audit is Monday and Tuesday of this week, so some of you may be getting calls from an auditor, just asking you simple questions. Don't be afraid. We really don't have much going on right now, just trying to, make through the fun and excitement.
All right, very good. Any questions for Stephanie? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the Langen report, which is in your packet as well. Jump over to it here. Any questions on the Langen report?
No.
All right, then on to the director's report.
All right, a couple of things I want to talk to you about. I emailed the housing study out to you earlier. It's a deep dive. There's a lot of detail in it, which is great. It just was approved through the RDA. It's going to City Council next Tuesday. There are a whole number of executive suggestions of things that we can be doing as a city. So I'd like to maybe bring that back to the November meeting to have a discussion about maybe what role we would play in with regards to housing and just kind of an update on where we are with housing in Green Bay. The Equal Rights Ordinance was passed through City Council.
Can I jump back to that housing study? Did that have any connection with that round table that we were uninvited to or didn't get invited to?
Oh, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
No. This was, the city hired a MSA, Professional Services Inc., to do this study. And so you might have sat in on some group meetings with regards to housing that we had sent out. But no, the roundtable, that was something else that we didn't do anyway.
Okay.
No comment.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
So the City Council passed an Equal Rights Ordinance, and part of that ordinance the original ordinance included a section that would not allow a landlord to discriminate against anyone who is receiving Section 8. So, in other words, if this ordinance would have passed in its entirety, as a landlord, you would not have been able to have said no to a Section 8 tenant. Because some landlords in Green Bay just don't accept Section 8. That would have made it, I guess, against the ordinance to do that. That section was pulled out, and it was passed without that section. The alders, Alder Sawyer, I think, and Alder Stevens, put in a communication to the Redevelopment Authority to have staff look at ways we can work better with landlords in Green Bay and this program. So I found out through this process, because it went through protection and policy, that the county, I think, actually had the Joshua Group put forward a communication right through the county, specifically asking for that Section 8 discrimination to not be able to do that pass through the county. That did not pass through the county. I don't know what happened. I think it went to different levels, and maybe Terry, you know more about this, because I wasn't involved in the county level on that. But I did talk with Patrick Leifer, who's from the Brock County Housing Authority. Of course, the voucher program is a county program. Mm-hmm. And I spoke with a representative from the Apartment Association who said, look, we'd love to work with you on these things. Maybe there are some tweaks we can make to the program that would make it easier for landlords to participate. Now there are some timing issues with vouchers. Sometimes landlords have to hold a unit for a month, or some of those things. So they're willing to come to the table and work on that. So I'll be setting up a group of people that will be trying to work with landlords in the county, as well as the other players, just on trying to figure out a way to make our housing choice voucher program a little bit more accessible and easy to use, so we have more people that are able to use it. So I wanted to give you a heads up on that.
That's fabulous, and if you want the disability component, I'm happy to sit on that committee. I would love that. We are having such a tough time. There's that piece that landlords aren't taking the voucher anymore, and then the other piece is landlords are now asking 2 to 3 times to show that you have the income for this rent, and these are people on fixed income. So if they're on SSI, they can't even save that amount, if they wanted to. So to address that possibly with the association, that would be wonderful. Sure.
Yeah, there are, there's this, I feel like there's this image of a voucher resident, right? Like, if you're in Section 8, you're a bad tenant. That's kind of this, discrimination that is happening. So part of that is we need to change that vision of what, mindset. That mindset. I think half of voucher recipients are elderly or disabled.
Correct.
I
think the other thing too, Cheryl, is possibly to get a landlord on there who is really positive about Section 8, because I've got friends in the Valley that have probably 60 units. They love Section 8. They would prefer to have that because it's a regular check.
Right.
And yes, they got to do some things and keep things up, but they're very good landlords and do that anyway.
Right.
So they've never had a problem. So it might be nice to have a positive piece to that committee. So
I think the apartment association, we do have some landlords that use the program that can, and which is good because they can actually share if there are ways to streamline things or if there's incentives we can build into it somehow. So
good. Thank you.
All right,
is Nikki still on the apartment association?
I'm not sure. My contact has been a woman named Cinnamon.
Okay.
Who's the government affairs outreach person.
Yeah, I don't think so, Jamie. I don't think so anymore. You're talking about Nikki, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about Nikki Aderholt? Yeah. Well, now she's not Nikki Aderholt, but yeah.
Okay, and then the last thing I want to report out is actually I just want to tell you about my Monday morning phone call that I got from Jamie. Jamie, why don't you share what my Monday morning phone call was?
I don't know what your Monday phone call was, but Tuesday wasn't very good.
Tuesday morning. Monday one. To talk about Tuesday.
Yep. We received 2 resignation letters. Both of our full-time maintenance men will be leaving the Green Bay Housing Authority, one November 2nd and one the following week.
Retirement and just a new job. David that lives in Shawano.
He lives in Shawano.
He's commuting back and forth, so I think he found something closer to where he lives, right?
Yeah.
So are both of them full-time?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So we just missed the personnel meeting on Tuesday night. So the mayor has agreed to allow us to take it straight to council on Tuesday for our committee of the whole to approve filling those positions. So we're going to fast track getting them filled as fast as we can. So.
How long are they going to be staying with us before they're done?
David will be with us until November 2nd. Jeff will be with us until November 9th or 10th.
Okay, so we've got a couple of days.
Yep.
All right.
Terry, did you have something?
Until then, will you be wearing yet another hat?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to operate. Look, I don't know how to operate that snowplow, but I'm willing to learn. So, our building staff, they remove the snow from Mason Manor.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're working on. We're going to have to try to find somebody who could, if we don't fill it before the snow flies, right? You don't know.
Yeah.
Hey,
to try to do some maintenance.
Bill, you want to hang up that log egg of yours? I'm sick of drawing buildings anyway, you and me. We can do that.
Yeah, there we go.
Like I can change light bulbs, I can.
Sure. Why not?
Right?
I can run through the floor.
You'd have to start dating from all kinds of bullets, but.
Right. So, yeah, so we're on a quick path to fill those positions. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you an update on that.
All right, good. Keep us posted.
Do we, is there anything as a board we could do to, thank the retiree for his services, beyond the formality of it? I don't know if that is proper or not, but it seems like.
I think it's we have an office policy where, it's, okay, we're COVID, so it was a cake and everybody
Yeah,
would
for the last
gather.
one, yep.
Yeah.
But if we do like a group card that gets sent out, for people who are leaving and retirees, so we'll be sure to send that to you guys too.
Yeah.
To the department, then we can forward that to you as well.
Is it a virtual card?
Yeah.
The virtual card, it's actually pretty cool. It's really easy to do, so you just sign it and.
Yeah, I've done a couple of those already. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Anything, Cheryl?
That's it. That's enough, isn't it?
Yeah, that's plenty. That's plenty. All right, then moving on to, let's see what we have next. Occupancy report for October.
So that is in your packet. Yep, I'm unmuted. So that is in your packet as well. This is the first month that we could pursue evictions in court. So we do have a lot more coming up. We do have a few tenants that are vacating just to needing more services, assisted living. So we do have a few of those Mace Manor tenants moving out. Todd is doing her due diligence in filling. Most of them have security deposits on the books for the next person moving in. We're doing as fast as we can to turn these units. We did receive 3 scattered sites October 1st, first week of October 1st, where our tenants pretty much took their TV with them and nothing else. And significant amounts of damage for 3 of our scattered sites. Significant amounts of damage, so we are just trying to get that turned and updated as fast and as quickly as we can.
Yeah, Wow is right with who usually does that clean out and update that?
So we actually hired one of our contractors to remove all the items from the 3 units. I think his bills were $1,200, $1,500, $1,000 just for the tippage fees and his time to remove the items. Okay. And then our contractors go in and clean, another one paints, and then our guys put everything back together. So like the wall, the damage in the drywall, our guys do fixing of stoves or kitchen sinks, we do.
Did our security deposits get even close? I mean.
No.
Bummer.
I think, one after security deposit owes us almost $10,000.
Wow. Wow is right.
I think another one owes us $5,000 or $6,000, I believe, so.
Is that from back rent? Or what is it? That seems like a lot of money. Is that
Some is from back rent because both of them did not pay since February or March, and we could not touch them. So $300, $400, $500 a month for 6, 7 months adds up quickly. For one specific unit, every screen was broken in half. The tippage fees from our gentleman removing the items, broken doors, windows.
Okay, so damage to the unit.
Okay.
Wasn't there a new refrigerator and stove for someone too? They had damaged them enough that we were building them back?
Wow.
All right, now I have a new dumb question about that. Is there something in the application process that we should have picked up on to avoid this variety of tenant in the first place? I mean, is that an option that we overlooked? Did we overlook something in the interview and application process that should have been a red flag that we were heading into this? Is that something that we can try to vet out? Is it something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean that in a punitive sense. I'm just trying to, like, oh, this sucks. That's a lot of money. I can't wait to see it in your deductions list later, Stephanie. I mean, you know, was there something that we could have done differently to avoid it?
Oh, there went Jamie. I was gonna say, Steve, for the housing regulations for applications, for checking in, it's really, you have to be very careful with what you do, just due to the regulations, because anybody could claim discrimination in a minute. Yeah, so, but I'm not sure with Jamie if you know, what they could do. If this tenant, if that, especially the big expense tenant had past history, I know that they do check references and things like that, so maybe someone just didn't give a correct reference.
Can I answer that?
Right?
Yeah, I was like, I would answer that.
Why don't you jump in?
So I do the background checks for all the applications that come through, and we do, so Langen does our criminal history check. So if they have a criminal history within the last 5 years, depending on what it is, if it's criminal, drug related, or alcohol related, then we do deny them for that. But we also do an additional past landlord reference check. I will be honest that within the last few years of doing these, a lot of landlords are getting in trouble for saying what they need to say when they're reporting on those landlord reference checks. So a lot of them just give me the best reference ever. And then there are others who refuse, there are others who refuse to answer any questions. So like I would get, yes, they lived here for like 2 years, and then their rent was this, and then that is all they answered. They refused to answer any of the other questions, which is, were they a good tenant? Was rent ever late? Did they ever permit anyone to live there without your permission? So a lot of my background checks now, most landlords are either giving me a perfect one, which sometimes does turn out to not to be such a good tenant, or I'm getting, they will not answer anything besides how long they've lived there and how much rent was per month.
Oh, so they don't say they've been late? They can't say that?
No, some landlords refuse to answer that question.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and I'm finding that most of them are refusing to answer any of those questions.
I don't want you to take my question personal or as a review in any sense. I'm just curious. I mean, you guys are doing great, and we're super proud of all of you.
And Steve, that is like we all ask ourselves that question every time we catch a tenant that trashes a unit. But here's part of one of the reasons I wanted to replace that clerk typist 3 position with a resident services coordinator was to look at that higher level, working with tenants. You know, what can we do as an organization? And I'll give you an example. When I remember renting one of the first places we rented, we had this landlord, great landlord. That landlord was on site at least quarterly, right? And just saying, hi, how's it going? There was interaction. I know they were checking the unit to make sure we weren't, doing things, but, maybe there's something we can do when we have this upgraded position to help us with our tenants, especially with scattered site, because they're out of sight for us, right?
Right.
So unless we get called there to do those small repairs, we have to be sure to be able to do some type of a scheduled visit with them. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying that is. But there are some of those processes I think that we can work on just to try to see if, someone's going down the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
6 months into a lease or
preventative peak, sure.
So, from the maintenance side of things, like to get into our tenants' units, we change furnace filters every 6 months. So that enables our guys to get in there every 6 months, kind of check it out, see how it's going in spring and fall. We typically try to do an inspection every summer just to get in there, and then the general work orders. So, we try to get into every single unit. Kyle and myself are in every single unit minimally quarterly because we do a housekeeping inspection in concurrence with our bed bug inspection. So there's always a staff member. So Mason Manor is minimally checked quarterly, minimally.
yeah.
When you do the checks, can you also look at CCAP?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, Langen does.
And Langen does our background checks as well.
Yep.
Okay. So that
just a quick question.
If they've had a similar damage claim incident in the past, it would pop up on CCAP somewhere. if they got sued, even if you don't get a jeopardy.
Right.
You can't collect against them, at least it's on record, and you'll know, in the future, and future landlords will know that this person had, a damage issue with them. So.
Well, and I assume that we're reporting our stuff accordingly too, so that the next person can find these things also, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Jamie, just a quick question. Did you say that someone left that still owes 10,000?
Yes, she's just under 10,000.
So what was the rent there and why is it 10,000? Does it just take that long for the eviction process?
During COVID, I couldn't legally evict
Oh,
anyone
that's
doing a
right.
rent.
Yep. And right now too, correct?
No, we can. It's a CDC referral, not a HUD requirement. So if there's like 6 things that a tenant has to meet.
Oh.
So yes, we can now, if there's like 6 items, if it's all correct, then we can proceed with termination.
Really? I didn't know that we could again this year. I thought that was a HUD thing okay, so it wasn't.
Yep.
That was just a CDC?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Very good to know. Because we're seeing people that are being evicted calling us, and we're like, you're not supposed to be able to evict somebody, so thank you for that update.
Yep.
Thank you.
That makes a lot more timely sense on
Yep,
damage and the whole works. Thank you for that clarification.
exactly.
Anything further for Jamie on the occupancy report? Okay, all right. Looks like we're coming to the end here. Date for our next meeting is November 19th. Any other questions for staff before we go to adjournment?
Just from me, I'm going to have a tough time making these meetings on time going forward. We have our statewide committee for the independent living centers that run usually from 9 to 10:30 on these Thursdays. We meet every other week, so it always falls, that second always falls on our meeting. So if there's anything that you don't have a quorum, I could kind of go off, but these are important meetings for me to be able to, so I might always be late.
Okay, that's fine.
So that makes it really important for everybody on the GBHA to let us know as soon as you can if you can't make the meeting. Just because we only have 5 on the committee. So.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, so that's why I just wanted to put that out there.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. All right,
Sandy.
Otherwise, we are ready for a motion to adjourn.
My mic's on, I'll make it.
All right, thanks, Sandy. All right, and I will second. So we have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Bye, y'all.
You're going to be circulating that retirement card?